Hello class, today we're going to talk about graphing expressions. So let's review a little bit about graphing real quick. We know that a coordinate grid is divided into 4 sections, and each of those sections is called a quadrant. Okay, where this top right-hand quadrant is going to be quadrant 1, okay, and it goes in a counterclockwise motion in the shape of a C. So this will be quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3 down here, and then this is quadrant 4. Okay, so we've got quadrants, and those are divided up by 2 lines. We have a horizontal line right here that we call the x-axis. And we have a vertical line here that's called a y-axis. And those 2 axes meet in the middle at a point called the origin. And it has a location of 0, 0. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be looking at today. So if I were to ask you what is this coordinate, you would say, starting at the origin, we go right 3. So that would be a 3. And we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we would have the coordinate 3, 7. If we wanted to identify this coordinate from the origin, we're going to go left 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is negative 5. And we go up 5, which would be positive 5. So each of the locations on this coordinate grid, like in this first quadrant, would be positive, positive. Okay, in quadrant number 2, you would have negative, positive. The numbers would be negative for your x and positive for your y. In quadrant 3, we would have negative, negative coordinates because we're going left and down. And then in quadrant 4, we would have positive, negative because we go to the right and then down. So today we're going to be looking at the same stuff we have been when we're evaluating t-charts, but now we're going to take that t-chart and graph it. So let's see what we've done so far. So far, we've evaluated expressions where I gave you a bunch of values. I gave you a value for x and for y and for z, and I changed up the expressions. We've also, where I've given you one expression, and I changed up the values of the variable. Okay, so what did we use to organize our data? We used a t-chart. Very good. So today what we're going to find out is why we organize the data in a t-chart. So let's see if we can review that concept. So here's one of our problems that we had on our homework assignment the other day. So let's see what we do. Okay, first, this t-chart says stuff. It says if x is negative 2, then x plus 4 is what? And that's what we're trying to find out. So what I had you do was take the negative 2 and plug it into the expression. So in this first one, we got negative 2 plus 4, which would give us positive 2. And then we changed the x value. Now it's negative 1 plus 4, which gives you 3. And then it's 0 plus 4 to give you 4. And hopefully by now you see that there is a pattern. So here I'm counting by 1, so I do the same thing and get 5 and 6. But what you have here, what you really created, was a set of coordinates, where the first number represents our x values. And what we don't really know yet is that the right-hand side of here, the x plus 4, the expression, is really our y side, because that is our y equals value. Okay, so what we can do with this is now put this on a graph. So let's see if we can do that. So we draw a graph where we have our 2 axes, our x and our y. We put some tick marks on there as evenly as possible. And we graph. So this first coordinate is negative 2, positive 2. So from the origin, that means go left 2, up 2, and put a dot. Then the next one is negative 1, 3. So that's left 1, up 3. Then the next one is right or left 0, up 4. Hopefully by now you realize that the dots are kind of following a pattern, kind of a linear pattern. Then the next one is 1, 5, right 1, up 5, and then the last one is right 2, up 6. And the last 2 follow in that same pattern. Now when we're looking at this graph, this is just a small portion of the graph, and it's just a bunch of dots right now. So what we need to do is understand that, are there points between 0 and 1? Could I have a 0.5? And yes, you could. Could I have a 0.01? Yes, you could. Could I have a 0.0001? Yes, you could. So we've got points all along this right here. So the way we represent that is we connect the dots there. But do we have the same points between 1 and 2? Yes, we do. What about from 0 to -1? Yes. And what about from -1 to -2? Yes. But do we also have values that are outside of 2? Could we have a 3 or a 4 or a 5? Yes, we could. We could also have a -2, -3, -4, all those kinds of things right there. We could have those. So the way we represent that is we extend the graph out with an arrow. So you plot the points from the t-chart, play connect the dots, and extend out in both directions. Let's try another one. What if I were to give you this one, 2x? Well, we do the same thing. Okay, we're going to plug in our values, plug in our x values into the expression. So in this first one, we got 2 times -2, which would give you -4. And then 2 times -1, which would give you -2. And then 2 times 0, which would be 0. So hopefully we have found the pattern now. We are increasing by 2. So we end up with 2 and then 4. And now we're going to come and do the same thing with our graph because we now have our set of coordinates. So the first one is -2, -4. So that's left 2, down 4. Next one is left 1, down 2. Then 0, 0, which is the origin. The next one is right 1, up 2. And then right 2, up 4. And now to finish the graph off, we connect the dots, extend out past, and then extend out past in the other direction. And that would be our graph. Now, do you notice any similarities between this graph and the graph we just did? Okay. Hopefully you did. Okay. Some of the similarities are, one, it is a line, but the second one is actually steeper than the first one. Okay. And later on, we're going to find out why it is steeper. Okay, so let's have you try one on your own real quick. So let's take 3x minus 3 and do that one on your own. Pause the video, copy that t-chart down, and graph it. Okay, let's see how you did. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is change my subtraction to addition next to its opposite. Now I'm ready to evaluate. So this first one says 3 times -2 plus -3. So 3 times -2 gives us -6, plus -3 gives us -9. Okay, then 3 times -1 plus -3, because my x value changed. So 3 times -1 is -3, plus -3 gives us -6. Okay, one more. 3 times 0 plus -3. Well, 3 times 0 is 0, plus -3 gives us -3. Hopefully you realize we're counting by 3s. So the next one then should be 0 and then 3. And now we graph. Okay, so we come to the graph and we've got -2, -9. So that's left 2, down 9. Okay, the next one is left 1, down 6. And then right or left none, down 3. Right 1, up or down 0. And then right 2, up 3. And now we connect the dots. Now hopefully you realize that this one is even steeper than the last one. Okay, so again, next week we'll find out why it is steeper. So let's try one more and then we'll be ready for our assignment. Okay, now this one, it's very similar to one that we did already, but this one's got a negative coefficient. Do you think that's going to have any impact? Well, let's see. Okay, so this one says -2 times, my x value is -2, so that'll give me a +4. Then -2 times -1, that gives me a +2. And then -2 times 0, well, that gives me a 0. So hopefully you realize that we are subtracting 2. So that's going to give me a -2 and then -4. So when we graph these, we have -2, +4, -1, +2. Again, 0, 0, which is the origin. And then right 1, down 2. And then right 2, down 4. Okay, so did that negative have an impact on the graph? I hope you saw that it did. So when we go back and we look at the original 2x, we'll notice that from left to right, okay, the way we read a graph, this one is going uphill. It is increasing in nature. When we change that coefficient to a negative, reading the graph from left to right, you'll notice the graph is going downhill or decreasing. And that's one of the things that that negative will do to your graph. So what you're going to do on your assignment today is the same exact thing. I'm going to give you some expressions. I want you to show me the work on the first 3 x values, evaluate them, and then graph it on the graph that is given for you. So until next time.